boarding in A Coruña for Madrid. Saying goodbye to Camino land, and I'm feeling calm, completed. Some people have commented on the smallness of my bag. It's gotten lighter, but I can hold it up with, one hand, one finger. It's that way. That's the way to live. If you're thinking about doing the Camino, definitely go back to my first few videos about preparation. It turned out bullseye in terms of supplies to bring. I didn't run into anything where I was missing something. And I even had a little bit of excess that allowed me to share with others traveling with me, even people I met. And my physical preparation, it seemed late, only a month before Camino, turned out to be enough. And mental preparation is maybe just as important. I definitely was stretched beyond anything I prepared for, but the mental prep is what saved the day. And now, I also know that my open spleen energy center wants to hold on to things longer than is good for me, and I see that, so I know that the right thing is to just move forward when I'm calm. And today, it was time to move forward. Leave the walking sticks, stop wandering the streets for one last experience, stop grabbing the last piece of jamón serrano, just and then it becomes sensory overload. And for the first time in 2 weeks, the majority of people around me are not peregrinos. In fact, nobody is. And yet, I'm in Madrid airport, where I landed 36 years ago, where the seed for the Camino was planted. And the conversation with the taxi driver made it clear, because it was in those years that the Galician government began to market the Camino and put in all the infrastructure, those little arrows that make the whole thing possible, to increase tourism. And it was when I was studying in Madrid, there was an excursion to Asturias pre-Camino days. And just about everybody in our class, I think everybody except one other than me, could afford it and go there. I couldn't afford it. And so I longed to go there. That was like proto-Camino. It was the soil of the Camino. And somewhere along the way, it kept getting planted, reinforced, and then it was the Martin Sheen movie, and then it was retirement. So I'm staying at the Marriott Airport Hotel here, but I think I've got 1 or 2 more places I want to visit as part of the closure process. Thinking about that, because you know what? Something happened when I went into the airport the analytical machine started up again. It's like it's been off for 2 weeks. And it was creating a business model to make Primitivo Path more accessible to Americans. And having a few different options with a concierge service, staffing it with college students or people who have done the Camino and want to stay in Spain for another year, do a year staffing my places, and all the places have the same routine so that you stay with my properties throughout your whole Primitivo, and they're stocked with the supplies. You put your you get your walking sticks at the first stop, you deposit them on the last stop, and I recycle them. Yeah, I just had so many little details, just and then what to do about the winter months. I just yeah. Retirement lasted a few months. Well, we'll see. We'll see how I get these business ideas all the time, and I don't run with most of them. I guess it's not over yet. And I am on my first stop now on Calle de Recaredo 6. Through those doors, somewhere up to one of those apartments where between September and December of 1990, I stayed with a widow, Maria Paz, whose husband had died after eating some bad lettuce. So she was very strict with me about cleaning the lettuce. And she had 2 sons living with her. One was 30, and he was an architecture student. The other was mid-20s. He was, I don't know what he was doing. And there was also a German college exchange student staying with us, so we were packed in there. And that's where all this began. So now I'm going to walk. My morning routine took 45 minutes. I would walk to get to the Gray Line metro, take the Gray Line metro to Moncloa, the university stopping point. I don't think I had a connection on the Gray Line. And then I would walk to get to Colegio Mayor San Agustin. So I think that's what I'm going to repeat here this evening. So it's rush hour here, and first impressions are, I don't remember walking these streets, not feeling anything from it. But had my mom known how complicated it was for a baby 20-year-old whose brain isn't even fully formed yet to cross all these traffic circles in morning rush hour to get to school for 3 months. I mean, Mom, you would have tried to stop me from coming, but you know that didn't work. So you just worried more. So it's better, actually, you didn't know for 36 years later how crazy it is to walk through a big city like this, but how perfectly safe it is if you got your head on a swivel. And what a great coming of age experience it was for me. because Madrid is fairly tame in comparison to some of the other places I went to, like Tangier. I'm now walking through University Complutense grounds. It's just a sprawling area surrounded by this federal park, which dwarfs Central Park in terms of size, I think. And I would, as little money as I had, I would spend a few times a week on getting access to a stadium and doing some track workouts. And I think you'd have to pay 5 pesetas or so to take a shower there. There was also a gym. I would pay a little higher price to get access to some weights. And I didn't want to get back to college and be out of shape. So I would teach English a few times a week, charge about $10 an hour. And I'd walk this path in the mornings, and I would have just a cookie and a coffee for breakfast, maybe something else. For lunch, I would have a Spanish tortilla, eggs and potatoes. And dinner, a couple times a week, was provided by my senora. The other nights, I'd have to get something from the market, some like a baguette and jamon iberico and tomatoes. Not a lot of protein, but hey, it turned out. Yeah, I think I found the track right on the way to the college. I don't remember the volleyball courts there. And over in the distance there was the soccer field, and beyond it a pool. And in the shade behind me, I think that's where the locker rooms were to change. Yeah, it was a dirt track, just like high school. It still is. Yeah, and they have not added a jumping pit in 30, almost 7 years. I'm in May. It's the end of the school year here, and I was jealous of those kids that spent the whole year here, but I didn't want to miss track season either, because if you spent the whole year, then you really learned the language and immerse yourself in the culture. And I was just getting there after being here 3 years, and it didn't quite stick. I could still get through conversations here. I did my first translation with my buddies pretty well. The Airbnb guest was explaining all the details, and I pretty much nailed it. But, not fluent, just sufficient. A whole year can do that. That's what I wished for all my kids, too. And this is where I started walking. The cities of Europe, mostly the capitals. I had a $500 Eurail pass, and every weekend I go somewhere else. I wouldn't have a plan. I would just walk. I would get lost inevitably and learn to trust the flow and movement, energy, landmarks of a city, and not to panic when I find I've been walking the wrong way for an hour. I also just realized I was using the metro and wasting money. I just walked the whole way from Calle de Recorrido. It's only taken an hour, and I think I was only shaving off 15 minutes to take the metro. But I remember all the dollar amounts stuck with me for almost 37 years. Behind me is Colegio Mayor de Universidad San Agustin. So I would walk through those doors every Monday through Thursday, and I would have 4 classes. The history of Spanish painting, Velázquez y Goya, another class about Spain's 2 famous painters. Those satisfied my art credits. And international finance. And then I think a class about Spanish culture and society. Didn't satisfy anything. But I remember that one of the painting classes, the male teacher was super charismatic and held us all on the edges of our seats with the stories. And we took at least one field trip to the Prado to see Picasso's work. So that must have been the history of Spanish painting. Guernica. But we also went to see Las Meninas of Velázquez. It was the first time I ever spent so much time looking at one painting and dissecting it, and then discovering how mischievous the artists were. The royalty would hire them to make them look awesome, but then they would sneak in all these practical jokes. And international finance made me feel like I was checking off one of my economics boxes. It wasn't too hard, but it was cool, learning in another language. The society one was, the thing that I remember from that is, now this was Spain prior to joining the European Union. It was still considered a second world country by others. And it was preoccupied with its approach to leisure. I think el ocio is what I remember. Because it definitely was a priority over your job. Your job is like this ugly thing that you didn't want to talk about, the thing that financed your leisure life. And I think there was some awareness that this was what was keeping Spain behind its neighbors. But yet it was such a rich part of the cultural fabric, nobody wanted to give it up. So it was somewhere in these doors where I'd go to the kitchen and get my Spanish tortilla. The American students would speak English among ourselves, and that's I regretted. I wanted a total immersion. I got it mostly outside of the classroom. The college. Yet another European statue of a man on a horse. Hangout Park. Dog walking park. In the Spanish Arc de Triomphe. Moncloa Metro Station is where students get off to come to university, and it's named after the district of tapas bars and general college kid hanging out. So that's where I'm going to have dinner tonight, Moncloa. So I couldn't find the subterranean row of tapas bars that was there in 1990, of course. But I realized I could keep walking. I had done this ritual in the park just a half hour ago where I wrote on a dozen note cards about a dozen things I was letting go of on the Camino. You know, and I bought some matches and burned them. And I felt no need to continue revisiting the past, tracing my steps. And so I walked forward and got a table outside, a little bit outside of Moncloa. Just enjoying the street energy of 9 o'clock on a Wednesday evening. Got a Mahau beer, eating some bacalhau, which is what I saw in Lisbon when I went there on a excursion. But now this is where Camino began almost 37 years ago, this September. And this is where it ends. After this, the future. And it was quite synchronous to walk by the St. Louis University campus of Madrid, where one of my kids went to SLU. So that points to the future. Exclamation point. Over and out.